It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator
welcome to the Opperman Report.
Ed Opperman.
I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com. You can just email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure to check out our Patreon. We put up a lot of new content this week with Patreon, a lot of exclusive stuff, exclusive just for Patreon, but also to all the stuff you hear Monday to Friday, AM/FM radio, you can find on Patreon, the Opperman Report Patreon. Our archives, you can always find for free at Spreaker.com. I do a live show every Friday night on Spreaker. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Opperman Report. And you get an email notification, and there's a chat room, too, on the old Friday night Spreaker content. We got a wild one for you today. Okay, this is a crazy story. You can hear about this on Lifetime True Crime. It's something called Phrogging, Hider in My House. I was contacted by James Campbell and his wife, Brittany Campbell. They were just tipped off, and then something weird happened to him. And I says, "Oh, something weird happened? Call Ed Opperman." Everybody, I seem to get all the weird stuff. Crazy story. I don't know how to get started with all this. I guess you could get more information on TikTok. James is there on The Evil Dad #2, and Brittany, you could find her on YouTube at It's Brittany Zane on YouTube channel there. So let's start off with Brittany. You want to go first?
Yeah. Hi, Ed. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Tell us about yourself. Who is Brittany Campbell?
Brittany Campbell is, first and foremost, I am a mom. I'm a health and wellness enthusiast. I'm a chronic Googler, and I'm a lifelong learner. Yes, that's probably the best way to describe me.
And how about you, James? Who's James Campbell?
I'm a Navy sailor. Been in the military for about 14 years. I'm a musician, and right now I've become sort of a veterans advocate and advocating for combat disability retirement pay, and that's about it. Family man, and yeah, we're happy for you to have us here.
Yeah, I know you guys have been through a real story here. Now, from what I understand, you came home and you found somebody living in your house. But before we get to that, before you got home that day, did you notice any kind of strange things going on around your home?
Yeah, I think that this is Brittany. I've noticed a lot of stuff kind of going on, but it was kind of like little things, like I'd hear a noise in the middle of the night and I'd go downstairs and the sliding glass door would be open. So in my mind, like, I thought I remembered closing it, but, maybe I didn't. Or in the middle of the night on my laptop, I would notice that the little light on my webcam would go on, and then I'd look in and see, and I'd notice that somebody had accessed my webcam remotely. But I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm reading this wrong. Maybe that's not what really happened. And just little, like, bumps in the middle of the night that could have been the neighbors. But I noticed some of those little things.
Now, go ahead.
And I did notice the noises as well, but I was initially dismissive of them because we were living in a duplex home, thin walls. It's just military housing, and our neighbors, they were loud. So any noise that you heard from the neighbors, you were going to hear them running up the stairs or pounding on the walls, their doors slamming. If they were mad, doors slammed. It was likely them.
And how long was this going on? How long was this going on?
A few months.
Okay. So then take us to the day you come home.
So we had been traveling all day. We were coming back from, we had a family emergency in California. We were coming back to Hawaii from there. We were all tired. We had been traveling Space A on a military flight. We drive up to the house, and I noticed that James's road bike was outside. And this was a bike that, was a pretty prized possession of James's, and he never left it out. So I kind of turned to him. I'm like, hey, James, did you leave your bike outside? Like, did you let the neighbor borrow it while we were gone? I just thought that was really off.
Yeah, so after Brittany had drawn attention to that, I went to the garage. I opened it up. It wasn't automatic, so I had to put the key in, slide it up, And once it was open, it was very apparent that something happened. We were thinking we got robbed. That we had just moved there not too long prior. I mean, military families move a lot, so we had a lot of boxes in there that were just unopened and stacked, and all those boxes were just torn apart. Everything was thrown everywhere in the garage. It was a disaster.
It looked like a bomb had gone off.
Right. So we ended up telling the kids stay in the car, and we headed to the front door.
Okay.
And,
you didn't think to just call the cops and wait and not go in?
So we were tired, and logic kind of wasn't there in that moment. We had been traveling for over 24 hours because we had the space available flights are pretty grueling.
Yeah.
And no, I honestly didn't think to call the cops at that moment.
How long had you been traveling and left the place unoccupied?
We had been gone a week, so we left on September 12th and came back on September 20th.
Now, you say this is military housing. Now, that means your neighbors were all in the military, too?
That's correct. So I should correct that it's not just military housing, it's privatized military housing. So it's not, the military doesn't own the house. It's operated by a company called
Ohana Military.
Ohana Military, or Hunt Military Communities.
And one thing that confuses a lot of people is it's not actually on the base; it's just outside of the gate.
Gotcha. Is there any possibility that this home was targeted because it was military property, like a military-run home housing?
There's a possibility.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so you make contact with this guy. What happens next?
So we go up to the front door, and James goes and unlocks the door, and there's some resistance to it. He can't open the door.
Right. So I push it a little bit, and then the guy's peeking through the door at me, telling me, "This isn't your home. You have the wrong house." And even my tired brain was just like, "Wait a second, I have the wrong house. How could that? No, I put the key in the door." And then I got upset, and I just remembered seeing a sledgehammer which is like the worst weapon ever.
Yeah.
But I grabbed the sledgehammer out of the garage and brought it back to the front door, pushed the door open, grabbed the guy out of the house, and he just kind of froze. Like, I don't think he went into do. We all have our fight-flight responses. I went into fight, and the suspect went into flight. Or freeze, actually.
Was he a large guy?
He was taller. He's taller than me. I'd say he's almost 6 foot. I'm 5'9", so maybe he's like 5'11", and he's skinny, and a young guy. He was like 26 at the time, and he wasn't. I don't know. I didn't feel intimidated by him. Maybe because I had so much adrenaline going on, but I was just laying into him, yelling at him, and kind of setting down the rules. Like, hey, if you run, I'm taking that as a threat. If you talk to my wife, I'm taking that as a threat. You look at my children, I'm taking that as a threat. And he's telling me to calm down, but then eventually he's so calm and just standing there that it just becomes this awkward moment. And then I start reflecting on, oh wait, like I can't. My kids are right behind me. I'm not going to bludgeon the guy in front of my children and traumatize them.
It's amazing what goes through your head in a situation like that. But little did you know, later on, this guy killed a guy in prison.
Yeah, that's not something that. We at that point we knew he was dangerous,
yeah.
And we had warned the judicial system, and we'd warned the police. I think they just handled all that poorly, and so it's not surprising. The very next day, the director of public safety stepped down for the state of Hawaii.
So when we first got there, like when we first got the guy out of the house, though, we were thinking that it was just some, poor homeless kid that like just somehow got in our, we didn't really know what was going on. Like he didn't really look like an intimidating person. Like in that moment, he was telling me to calm down. I was screaming at him because at this point I'd gone in the house. Our cat doesn't do well in boarding, so we had actually left him there, and a maintenance person was supposed to come check on him. So my cat was in the house, and that was like my first concern, was trying to figure out what he did to my cat, because I had gone inside the home and I didn't see him anywhere. Turns out he had him in a cage, and he had, he told me, he's fine. He's in the kitchen. I fed him. Turns out he was trying to turn the cat vegan, according to his notes, and he had him in a cage in the kitchen. So, I found him, and then, my next thought was, okay, James has him held. I need to call the police. I couldn't figure out how to use my phone, though. My brain was completely, like, frazzled, and I was just staring at my phone. Like, I didn't know how to, like, swipe up and open it and call the police. I was screaming to I just kept screaming to the neighbors, hey, somebody call the police. This is a stranger in our home. I don't know them. Our neighbors, we lived in a cul-de-sac, and our neighbors came outside and kind of were, like, staring at us, and nobody really did anything. And then finally I was able to figure out my phone, and I called the police, and all I could do was, I couldn't think of our address. Like, I just kept screaming, please help us. There's an intruder in our home.
How long does it take the cops to show up?
It didn't take them long, and there were a lot of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it took maybe 10 minutes, or maybe less. Like, I don't, that whole moment, it's just kind of, it was like frozen in time. But yeah, I don't think it took very long. And there were maybe, by the end of the whole thing, there was, I don't know, maybe like 8 cop cars, and military police came, and it was a big deal to them. But then we're locked out of the house, and we don't really know what's going on in the house, and we were just waiting for them to clear the scene.
And this fellow,
so at that,
Ezekiel Zayas, he didn't try to escape your custody?
Well, James had a sledgehammer.
Okay.
Right there, so.
Yeah, I told him if he ran, I was gonna.
Okay. Like he had him against the wall, kind of cornered with the sledgehammer.
Gotcha. Oh, and the kids, how old are your kids?
At that point, they were 9 and 12.
Oh, they must have been having a heart attack in the car. Yeah.
2019.
Well, they came up. One of our boys had to use the restroom, and they come walking up, and they just see their dad with a sledgehammer and this guy, and they're like, "Never mind," and went and got back in the car.
Yeah, I had to yell at him, like, "Get back in the car and lock the doors."
Okay, so then when the cops come, they just treat this as what, like a squatter situation? What do they treat it as?
They treat it as a burglary.
Okay.
That's the other thing. The statute in Hawaii for burglary, it covers quite a bit of things. So,
and like at the time, it looked like a burglary. Like when you go in our house, he kind of had our items categorized. Like it looked like he had kind of been looking through what we had, maybe trying to sell things. At first glance, it looked like a burglary.
Right. So they charged them with first-degree burglary, which is a felony in Hawaii, and is it can include violent elements. It can include a certain amount of property destruction and things like that. So that's all they charged them with. He was wearing my clothes and my shoes. That's of note. And then they put him in handcuffs, asking him his name, and they immediately put him in the cop car.
Did he leave behind any of his own possessions?
He left behind. So he left behind a cell phone, and just kind of like a pay-as-you-go cell phone.
Yeah.
A charging block, like a charging bank for the cell phone, as well as he had a ticket that he had gotten.
Smoking ticket, right?
A public smoking ticket that he'd gotten in I think it was for the same day or the day before.